Was ancient navigation just about sturdy ships and twinkling stars? Or was there something more? Something deeper that guided those early sailors across the vast, featureless oceans? It's easy to imagine a lone captain, eyes fixed on the North Star, hand steady on the tiller. But the real story is much grander. It's a story about a revolution in human thought. Before anyone could confidently sail out of sight of land, they needed more than just a boat. They needed a new way of thinking about their place in the universe. This journey wasn't just physical, it was intellectual. It was a voyage of the mind, a quest to understand the very fabric of reality. The greatest tool they had wasn't a sextant or a map, it was an idea. This idea was born from an incredible act of imagination. Early thinkers, the first philosophers of ancient Greece, started looking at the world differently. They saw the sky and the sea not as two separate realms, but as parts of a single, interconnected system. They imagined the Earth as a sphere, floating in a vast cosmos governed by understandable rules. This was a radical departure from the old ways of thinking, which were filled with unpredictable gods and terrifying sea monsters. These philosophers suggested that the universe wasn't chaotic, it was orderly. And if it was orderly, that meant it could be understood, it could be predicted. This was the unseen compass, a mental framework that gave humanity the courage to explore. The shift wasn't driven solely by the need to trade or to conquer new lands. It was fueled by something more fundamental, pure, unadulterated curiosity. Think about it. Why does the sun rise and set? Why do the stars circle the pole? Why do some stars, the planets, wander across the sky? These weren't just practical questions for sailors. They were deep philosophical puzzles that ignited the human spirit of inquiry. The first mariners were also the first astronomers. They weren't just looking for directions, they were looking for answers. They were scientists in the truest sense, driven by a desire to know. Their voyages across the water were experiments, testing their theories about the cosmos. This new way of seeing the world gave early sailors a profound sense of confidence. If the heavens followed a predictable pattern, then perhaps the earth did too. The same logic that explained the movement of the stars could be applied to the world right here. The sun's path across the sky could tell you your latitude. The length of the day, changing with the seasons, could provide clues about your position. The cosmos became a giant, reliable clock and a universal map, available to anyone who dared to learn its language. The ocean was no longer a realm of chaos, but a great watery plain set beneath a sky that was knowable and therefore navigable. This was the dawn of a new age of exploration powered by thought. Imagine trying to sail across the Mediterranean, believing that the ocean's moods were controlled by the whims of a temperamental god like Poseidon. Every storm, every rogue wave would be a sign of divine anger. Every calm sea would be a temporary blessing. How could you possibly plan a journey in such a world? This was the mythological worldview, where nature was alive with powerful, unpredictable forces. It was a world of stories, of epics, but it was not a world that encouraged systematic exploration. To truly master the seas, humanity had to let go of the gods as an explanation for everything. They had to find a new guide, one that was consistent and reliable. This monumental shift began in the coastal cities of Ionia, in ancient Greece. Thinkers like Thales and Anaximander started to propose something truly revolutionary. They suggested that natural phenomena, like rain, wind, and earthquakes, weren't caused by angry deities. Instead, they were the results of natural processes. Thales famously predicted a solar eclipse, not through prophecy, but through observation and calculation. He treated the cosmos as a machine that could be understood, not as a drama directed by gods. This was the birth of science. It was a courageous act of defiance against centuries of tradition, a declaration that human reason could unravel the mysteries of the universe. This new approach replaced mythology with mathematics. The world, these philosophers argued, was written in the language of geometry. The circle of the horizon, the arc of the sun, the spherical shape of the earth itself. These were all geometric forms. By applying the principles of geometry, you could do amazing things. You could measure the height of a pyramid without climbing it, just by using its shadow. And if you could do that, you could measure the earth. You could calculate your position on its surface. Suddenly, the world was no longer an unknowable expanse. It was a set of problems that could be solved with logic and reason. For a sailor, this was a game changer. The stars were no longer just the campfires of the gods or the souls of fallen heroes. They became points in a celestial coordinate system. The constellations became reliable signposts in the sky. The seasonal rising and setting of certain star groups told you the time of year, crucial for knowing when it was safe to sail. The angle of the North Star above the horizon could tell you how far north or south you were. The world of myth was beautiful, but it kept you tied to the shore. The world of geometry, of observation and reason, gave you the freedom to sail into the unknown and find your way back. The next great leap came from two of the most famous thinkers in history, Plato and Aristotle. They may not have been sailors themselves, but their ideas about the universe profoundly shaped the minds of those who were. Plato urged us to look beyond the messy, imperfect world of our senses. He believed that the true reality was a world of perfect forms, of pure ideas. For him, the cosmos was a perfect geometric creation. The planets and stars moved in perfect circles, following divine mathematical laws. This idea of a perfect, orderly universe was incredibly powerful. It told navigators that beneath the seemingly chaotic waves and unpredictable winds, there was a hidden order. Plato's student, Aristotle, took this idea and brought it down to earth, literally. He was a meticulous observer of the natural world. He studied animals, weather, and the heavens with an insatiable curiosity. Aristotle provided physical proof for what was once just a philosophical idea. He argued that the earth must be a sphere. How did he know? He observed that as ships sailed away, their hulls disappeared before their masts. He also noticed that the earth cast a curved shadow on the moon during a lunar eclipse. These weren't abstract theories. They were concrete observations that anyone could see for themselves. He was teaching people to trust their own eyes and to use reason to interpret what they saw. This Aristotelian model of the universe, with a spherical earth at the center, became the standard for nearly 2,000 years. It was a complete, coherent system. You had the earth surrounded by concentric crystalline spheres holding the moon, the sun, the planets, and finally the stars. Everything had its proper place. Everything moved in a predictable way. For a navigator, this was like being given the universe's instruction manual. It confirmed that the world was rational and finite. It gave them a mental map of the entire cosmos, with their own tiny ship located right at its heart. It was a picture of the world that made sense. This mental model was crucial. It transformed the act of navigation from a guessing game into a science. If the Earth was a sphere, then you could apply the rules of spherical geometry to it. You could create concepts like latitude and longitude. You could develop instruments and techniques based on the idea of a predictable spherical cosmos. The philosophical framework wasn't just background noise, it was the operating system that made scientific navigation possible. Plato's ideal cosmos and Aristotle's observable world came together to create a universe that was not only beautiful and orderly, but also, most importantly for a sailor, navigable. The legacy of these ancient Greek thinkers was not just a collection of dusty scrolls. It was a new way of interacting with the world. The philosophical quest to understand the cosmos directly enabled the practical quest to explore the Earth. Later astronomers like Eratosthenes took these ideas and ran with them. Using Aristotle's spherical Earth model and some clever geometry, Eratosthenes made an astonishingly accurate calculation of our planet's circumference. He did it with nothing more than shadows, wells, and the power of human reason. This was a monumental achievement. It turned the Earth from a mysterious, boundless plane into a measurable, finite world. Once you know the size of the world, you can begin to map it. The idea of a grid system of latitude and longitude, a concept we take for granted today on our GPS devices, was a direct result of this philosophical and scientific revolution. The astronomer Hipparchus, building on these earlier ideas, was one of the first to propose using a grid to specify the position of any place on Earth. He understood that to map the Earth, you first had to map the sky. He meticulously catalogued over 850 stars, noting their positions in the celestial sphere. The sky became a fixed grid against which the moving Earth could be charted. This knowledge trickled down from the great libraries and academies to the docks and the decks of ships. Sailors learned to use simple instruments, like the gnomon, a primitive sundial, or the cross staff, to measure the angle of the sun and stars. These weren't just tools for finding direction. They were scientific instruments that allowed a mariner to participate in this grand intellectual tradition. When a sailor measured the height of Polaris, he was using a principle grounded in the philosophical understanding of a spherical Earth and a predictable cosmos. He was, in a very real sense, a practicing astronomer. His ship was a floating observatory. So, when we look back at those early explorers, we should see more than just brave adventurers. We should see the heirs of a profound philosophical tradition. They sailed with the confidence that the universe was not a place of chaos, but of cosmic order. Their courage came not just from their sturdy ships, but from the sturdy intellectual framework built by generations of thinkers who dared to ask questions about the sky. They showed us that the journey to the stars and the journey across the oceans are one and the same. It is a journey powered by the most potent force in the universe, the human mind and its unending quest to know the cosmos.